The Mann family was once admired by millions. Tamila Mann, a gospel icon whose voice could lift spirits and bring audiences to tears, stood alongside her husband, David Mann Sr., who seemed to love and protect her. Their son, David Mann Jr., was seen as the quiet strength of the family, someone who respected his parents and stayed away from the spotlight. Together, they seemed to embody unity, faith, and hope. This video tells the story of how David Jr. risked everything, from his family bonds to his peace of mind, to save his mother and reveal the truth to the world. Watching a legend fade away, David Jr. had grown up listening to his mother's voice. It wasn't just beautiful, it felt like it carried faith itself. Her songs were filled with emotion that made listeners cry, reflect, and feel hope. At home, Tamila was even more than what fans saw. She was strong, kind, and always ready to support her family. But then, slowly, things changed. It began with small things. Tamila forgot words to songs she had performed for years. Sometimes she would stop mid-sentence, looking confused. David Jr. noticed how tired she seemed, even after resting. Her laughter became rare, and her smile, once quick and bright, seemed forced. At first, David Jr. hoped it was just exhaustion from long tours and constant work. But as weeks turned to months, the changes grew impossible to deny. Tamila often sat silently, staring into nothing. Her hands, which once held microphones with confidence, now trembled. Her voice, that had once filled churches, sounded weak and shaky. Family members said it was stress, or maybe age catching up. The family doctor, Dr. Jackie, offered pills and reassurances, saying Tamila just needed rest and medication to feel better. Yet, deep in his heart, David Jr. felt fear growing. He saw his mother fading away, not like someone growing older, but like someone being pulled into darkness. Each day, it seemed like less of Tamila remained. Her strength was disappearing, her spirit dulled. David Jr. couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't natural. The woman who had given her life to music and family was becoming a shadow, and no one could explain why. A son's awakening, finding the hidden truth. The pain of watching his mother fade turned into something stronger inside David Jr. He couldn't ignore it anymore. The more he looked around, the more things felt wrong. Tamila trusted her husband and doctor, Jackie, completely, but David Jr. began to notice details that made his heart sink. One evening, he sat quietly in the living room, pretending to scroll through his phone. He watched Dr. Jackie pour his mother's nightly drink. He saw his father give her pills without explaining what they were. The labels were often missing, and sometimes the bottles looked different from week to week. David Jr. couldn't let it go. His instincts told him there was something darker at play. David Jr. began quietly collecting everything he could. He took photos of the medicine bottles. He read through medical reports that seemed to say different things on different days. He checked Tamila's bank statements and saw transfers she hadn't approved. The deeper he looked, the more it became clear. His father and Dr. Jackie were not protecting Tamila. They were controlling her. Every new piece of evidence felt like a cut to David Jr.'s heart. This wasn't a stranger hurting his mother. It was his own father, the man who once seemed like the family's strength. And Dr. Jackie, a doctor they trusted for years, was part of it. The betrayal felt heavy, but David Jr. knew he had to act. He gathered everything into a thick folder: lab reports, emails, pharmacy logs, even secret voice recordings. David Jr. was no longer just a worried son. He had become an investigator fighting for his mother's life. Each page in that folder was proof of the nightmare happening behind closed doors. The confrontation. Truth breaks the silence. The day came when David Jr. could not stay silent any longer. He entered the family home like a storm, his heart pounding. Tamila lay weak on the couch, barely able to lift her head. Dr. Jackie sat nearby with a calm, cold expression, pretending to offer care. Then David Sr. appeared, trying to look calm and collected. David Jr. could feel the weight of what he was about to do, but he didn't hold back. With a voice trembling from anger and pain, he pointed at both of them and shouted, "I know everything." The words cut through the quiet room like a knife. He dropped the thick folder onto the floor, and papers spilled everywhere. Medical reports, bank transfers, and voice recordings. David Jr.'s voice grew louder as he listed the proof. Drugs Tamila didn't need, secret financial moves, and suspicious prescriptions signed by Dr. Jackie. The room felt frozen as the truth finally came out. David Sr.'s face turned pale. His calm expression vanished, replaced by fear and anger. Dr. Jackie's hands shook slightly, her mask of confidence slipping. Tamila, weak and confused, tried to speak, but could only whisper. David Jr. knelt beside her, gently holding her hand, his voice softer for a moment. "Mom, they were killing you," he said, fighting back tears. Then the mask fully slipped from David Sr. Instead of denying it, he shouted that Tamila couldn't take care of herself, that someone had to protect what she built. But David Jr. didn't accept that. He stepped closer, his voice sharp. "You didn't protect her. You controlled her. You drained her strength to take what she worked for." Turning to Dr. Jackie, David Jr. shouted, "And you helped him. You gave her drugs she never needed. You lied to her face, and you let her believe she was sick." His words hit like thunder, breaking years of silence. Tamila began to cry quietly, the truth finally spoken aloud. In that moment, David Jr. became more than just a son. He became the voice his mother had lost, the strength she needed to face what had been done to her. A father's confession and a son's fury. The air in the living room felt heavy, like it could shatter from a single word. David Jr. stood inches from his father, eyes burning with betrayal and rage. His father, David Sr., tried to defend himself, saying he only wanted to protect Tamila, that she was becoming confused and fragile. But his words felt empty, and his voice cracked under the weight of guilt. David Jr.'s voice was firm. "Protect her? You drugged her. You turned her into someone who couldn't speak for herself, just so you could control her money, her music, and her future." His words echoed off the walls. Dr. Jackie stood silently now, her face drained of color, as she realized there was no way to hide what they had done. David Jr. played secret voice recordings for everyone to hear. In them, Tamila's voice sounded tired and slow. "I don't feel right. Jackie says it's vitamins, but they make me feel worse," she whispered in one recording. In another, she asked why David Sr. kept asking for her passwords and why her royalties were being moved. Each recording was like a hammer, breaking the lies that had held the family captive. Tamila watched through tears, understanding the depth of what had been done to her. Her own husband had turned love into control. David Jr.'s heart broke for her, but his anger stayed. He pointed at Dr. Jackie, demanding she explain why she gave his mother a banned sedative not approved for human use. The doctor couldn't answer. The truth had caught up. David Sr.'s voice finally cracked. "She's my wife. I built her career. If anyone deserves it, it's me," he shouted, but his words sounded hollow. David Jr. shook his head. "You didn't build her. You used her. She built herself with faith and sacrifice. You only saw money." At that moment, David Jr. knew he couldn't let this stay hidden. His voice rose as he dialed 911, telling the world what his own father had done. The man he once admired was no longer family, but an enemy to the very woman who had given them both everything. The sirens, the arrest, and the last plea. As David Jr. spoke to the emergency operator, his voice was calm but heavy with pain. My father, David Mann Sr., and Dr. Jackie Walters have been drugging my mother, Tamila Mann, for months. I have proof. I need them arrested. His words cut through years of silence, turning private horror into public truth. Outside, the wail of sirens grew louder, blue and red lights dancing across the walls. David Sr. stepped back, sweat shining on his forehead. His calm face had turned into panic. "David, don't do this! You'll destroy us!" he pleaded. But David Jr. answered coldly, "You already destroyed everything. I'm just telling the truth." The door burst open, and 2 police officers entered the home. One officer gently approached Tamila, kneeling to ask if she understood what was happening. Tamila's voice, weak but clear, named the people who had betrayed her. David and Jackie. They said the pills would help me rest. Those words changed everything. The officers turned to Dr. Jackie first. Her protests were quick and desperate, but the handcuffs clicked around her wrists anyway. David Sr. shouted, claiming David Jr. was lying for fame or revenge, but his words had no power anymore. David Jr. stepped forward, his voice stronger than ever. "No, I'm saving my mother. You tried to erase her, but you couldn't erase the truth." As the officers led David Sr. and Dr. Jackie toward the door, neighbors gathered outside, phones raised to record the moment. The family secret had become a public scandal. Tamila, still trembling, reached for David Jr.'s hand. Her son, who once stayed silent, had chosen to speak, even against his own blood. The silent night, and the first flicker of hope. After the police cars drove away, silence filled the house. But David Jr. couldn't feel peace. His mind raced with questions about what would come next. Would the court believe the evidence? Would the media twist the story? Most of all, would his mother ever heal from what had been done to her? That night, David Jr. sat beside Tamila's bed, unable to sleep. Reporters camped outside, cameras ready to capture the smallest sign of drama. Lawyers called, offering help or asking questions. A nurse visited to help Tamila through an emergency detox, her body weak after months of being poisoned. Every sound made David Jr.'s heart beat faster, but he stayed where he was, guarding his mother like a soldier. As dawn approached, something changed. Tamila opened her eyes, and for the first time in months, she didn't look confused. Her gaze was clear, though tired. She asked, "Where's David?" Her voice was faint, but it carried strength David Jr. hadn't heard in so long. He answered softly, "Which one, Mom?" Tamila paused, and her face hardened as memories returned. "The man who promised to protect me, who stood at the altar and swore we'd face every storm together," she whispered. Her voice shook, but it didn't break. But when the storm came, he poured gasoline on it instead. David Jr. felt a painful pride. His mother's words were heavy with betrayal, but they were hers again, not fogged by sedatives. Tears filled his eyes, but he held her hand and nodded. For years, Tamila had trusted the wrong people, but that trust had finally broken. The night had been long and dark, but in her clear voice, David Jr. saw a first glimpse of hope. A mother's notebook. The evidence. They couldn't hide the next morning. Tamila's strength surprised even David Jr. She asked him to help her sit up, and then she reached for something on the nightstand. a small, worn notebook. Its cover was creased and pages curled from use. Tamila opened it with shaking hands. "I wrote it down," she whispered. Page after page was filled with her careful handwriting. Dates, times, and memories of when something felt wrong. Pills she didn't remember asking for, words her husband said that made her feel small, and times Dr. Jackie told her not to question the medication. David Jr. flipped through the notebook slowly, his heart sinking with each page. Tamila had written notes even when her mind felt foggy. Sometimes the sentences were broken or unfinished, but the fear and confusion were clear. One note read, "David says I'm tired, but why do I feel dizzy after smoothies?" Another said, "Jackie gave me new pills. I don't know why." Each line felt like a silent scream that had gone unheard. David Jr. looked at his mother, tears in his eyes. "This is it, Mom," he said. "You saved yourself, even when they tried to silence you." Tamila's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was stronger than before. "They took my words, but they couldn't take my truth." That notebook became more than memories. It became a weapon. With it, David Jr. knew they could prove in court that Tamila hadn't just been sick. She had been betrayed. The words she had written when she was weakest would now help her fight back. Facing the cameras. A family's truth goes public. The story that had lived behind closed doors for so long couldn't stay hidden anymore. By morning, reporters crowded outside the house, microphones ready. News vans lined the street. The betrayal that had almost stolen Tamila's life had become a story the world wanted to hear. David Jr. looked at his mother, unsure if she was ready. But Tamila surprised him. She wiped away her tears, straightened her head wrap, and said softly, "Let them hear it from me." David Jr. helped her to a velvet chair in the living room. His hands shook as he set the notebook beside her, a reminder of the truth they were about to share. A reporter leaned forward, voice gentle but direct. "Miss Mann, is it true? Did your husband and Dr. Jackie try to harm you?" Tamila's answer came without hesitation. "Yes. My husband and Dr. Jackie tried to silence me. They made me believe I was losing my mind, all for money and control." Her words were steady, and her eyes, once clouded by sedatives, were clear. David Jr. sat beside her, holding her hand. Tears formed in his eyes as he listened to his mother speak with courage. "I trusted them with my life," Tamila continued, "but they saw my trust as weakness. They tried to turn my silence into profit." Her words weren't just for herself, but for anyone who had been betrayed by those closest to them. The reporter then asked, "What do you want now?" Tamila looked directly into the camera. "I want justice. I want my name back, my music back, and my peace back. And I want the people who did this to face the law, no matter who they are." In that moment, Tamila didn't sound like someone who had been broken. She sounded like the woman who once filled churches with her voice. Her words spread quickly online, reaching millions who had loved her music. The truth had been buried, but now it was louder than ever. The courtroom battle. Truth versus lies. 2 days later, the family story moved from the living room to the courtroom. Reporters gathered outside, cameras flashing as Tamila arrived with David Jr. by her side. Her walk was slow, but her gaze was firm. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. David Sr. and Dr. Jackie sat together, looking like shadows of the powerful pair they had once been. The judge reviewed the evidence piece by piece. David Jr. and his legal team had prepared everything. The voice recordings where Tamila questioned the pills, the financial records showing money moved without her consent, and the notebook filled with her handwritten memories of fear and confusion. Each page was proof that this wasn't a simple family disagreement, but something far darker. David Jr. watched his father carefully, trying to understand how the man he once admired could do something so cruel. At times, David Sr. lowered his eyes, unable to meet his son's gaze. But Dr. Jackie kept glancing nervously at the evidence, knowing that years of secrets were now exposed. Tamila sat quietly, her hands resting on her notebook. When it was time to speak, her voice didn't shake. "I trusted them," she told the court. "They took that trust and used it to steal my voice, my freedom, and almost my life." Her words moved even those who had never heard her sing. The courtroom listened to every detail: the false diagnosis of early-onset dementia, the banned sedatives, and the secret attempts to change her will. By the time the last piece of evidence was shared, the truth felt undeniable. David Jr. felt a strange mix of pain and relief. Exposing this truth meant hurting family ties forever. But it was the only way to protect the woman who had given him everything: justice, healing, and a new beginning. When the judge finally spoke, the courtroom felt completely still. David Jr. held his breath as he listened. Arrest warrants were confirmed, and the court accepted all the evidence: the notebook, the audio files, the lab reports, and the bank records. For Tamila, it wasn't just a legal victory, it was a moment to reclaim her life. David Sr. and Dr. Jackie sat silently, the weight of their choices finally catching up. They had built their plans on secrecy, trusting that Tamila would stay silent and David Jr. would stay blind. But love and truth had proven stronger than greed. The courtroom's decision was clear: the betrayal was real, and there would be consequences. As they left the courthouse, Tamila walked slowly, supported by her son. Reporters crowded around, but this time their questions didn't feel like an attack. Tamila spoke softly. "I was almost erased, but my son saved me." Her words echoed far beyond those walls, reaching people who had faced betrayal in their own lives. In the days that followed, something beautiful began to happen. Old fans shared her music again online. Churches played her songs, remembering the strength in her voice. Record labels offered to re-release her shelved albums, and gospel artists spoke up in support. The story of her fight became more than a scandal. It became a symbol of survival and love. At home, Tamila began the long road to healing. David Jr. stayed close, no longer just a son, but a protector. He knew they would still face interviews, gossip, and painful memories, but none of it mattered compared to the truth now spoken aloud. In quiet moments, Tamila sat at her piano, and slowly her voice returned. Faint at first, then stronger, like a light breaking through dark clouds. David Jr. watched, tears in his eyes, as his mother sang once more. What greed tried to bury had survived. Her voice, her spirit, and her story would not be forgotten. Together, they had faced the deepest betrayal a family could endure, and together, they were ready to build something new, built on truth and love that no lie could ever silence. In the end, Tamila's song continues, not just as music, but as proof that the truth, once spoken, can set you free.